Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive. Today, we're taking a look at artificial intelligence, or AI for short.
AI, huh? It seems like everyone's talking about it these days.
For good reason. It's changing so much about how we live and work. You actually sent me some info about a class on AI that's making a big splash.
Oh, yeah. What class is this?
It's happening at the Archer Lifelong Learning Institute at UGA, OLLI for short.
OLLI. Okay.
And get this, it's so popular, they've got a waiting list.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. What's the class all about?
It's called Artificial Intelligence, History, Accomplishments, and Philosophical and Moral Questions.
Sounds pretty comprehensive.
It is. And to make it even more accessible, they're offering it in-person A&D on Zoom. March 24th, 2025 is the date. So, for our deep dive today, let's take a peek at what this class is all about, even if we're not on that waiting list.
Sounds good to me.
So the class description really lays it out. They're going to start with a review of like the first 50 years of AI research.
Yeah.
Going back to the early days and seeing how it all began.
That makes sense. You got to understand the roots to appreciate where things are headed.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Then they're going to jump into the world of artificial neural networks, which are like the building blocks for a lot of the really cutting edge stuff we're seeing.
Like deep learning and generative AI. I've heard about that. And ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, yeah. Seems like everyone's using that now.
Mm.
But they're not just stopping at the tech itself.
Oh, good. There's more.
Yeah, the class also goes into all the philosophical and moral questions that come with AI, which I think is super important.
Definitely. It's not just about the tech. It's about how it impacts us.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of fascinating, the instructors for this class are pretty interesting too.
Oh, tell me of them.
Well, the first one is Jack Hansen, and this guy's got quite the resume. He's led research organizations both in academia and for the government.
Impressive.
He's even consulted for NASA Ames on AI projects.
NASA. Wow.
Yeah. And before that, he was the deputy director for research at NASA Ames. So he was overseeing a massive research budget.
That sounds like he really knows his stuff.
Oh, he does, and that's just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
But wait, there's another instructor too, and this is where it gets even more interesting.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Who else is teaching this?
Aaron Simmons. He's a professor of philosophy at Furman University. So a totally different background than Hansen.
That's a cool combination. A scientist and a philosopher teaching about AI.
Right. And what I find really interesting about Simmons is his passion for making philosophy relevant to everyday life.
Oh, I like that. Philosophy can sometimes seem a little bit, out there.
Right, but he's got this book called Camping with Kierkegaard, Faithfulness is a Way of Life. And it's all about using outdoor experiences and ideas from all these thinkers like Kierkegaard, Sartre, even Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick Lamar, that's unexpected.
I know, right? It's about taking these big philosophical concepts and applying them to everyday life. So you've got this scientist who's worked on AI projects for NASA and the philosopher who brings in these different perspectives. It's a pretty amazing pairing for a class like this.
Yeah, they really couldn't be more different in their areas of expertise.
Exactly. But that's what makes this class so intriguing, I think.
Absolutely. I can see why it's got that long waiting list. It's amazing to think about how far AI has come from those early days of research.
I know, right? And as we were saying before the break, it's raising some really big questions, especially about ethics.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about what AI can do, but what it should do.
Exactly. And it seems like this OLI class is really diving deep into those questions.
Yeah, with those two instructors from such different backgrounds, it's going to be interesting to see how they approach it all.
Totally. One thing I've been hearing a lot about is how AI might impact jobs. It's a concern that's been around for a while.
Yeah, I get that. With AI getting smarter all the time, it's natural to wonder if it'll replace human workers.
So what do we do? Do we try to, slow down AI development to protect jobs, or do we just embrace the change?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Some people say we need to focus on retraining people for new jobs that'll come up in an AI world. Others think we need to rethink our whole idea of work.
It's definitely complicated, no easy answers there. But it seems like we need to find ways to, use AI to our advantage without leaving people behind.
For sure. And it's not just jobs either. There's also the issue of bias in AI, especially when it's used for things like decision-making.
Oh, right. I've heard about that. Can you explain what that means exactly?
Well, AI learns from data, right? So if the data itself is biased, the AI can end up being biased too.
I see. So it's not necessarily that the AI is intentionally biased. It's more like It's picking up biases from the information it's given.
Exactly. Think about something like loan approvals. If the data used to train the AI shows that people from a certain neighborhood tend to default on loans more often, the AI might unfairly reject applicants from that neighborhood, even if they're actually good risks.
That's pretty scary, actually. Like, even if no one's trying to discriminate, the AI could still end up doing just that.
That's why it's so important to make sure the data used to train AI is fair and unbiased.
Makes sense. And you mentioned earlier that this OI class will also look at some of the big philosophical questions related to AI.
Right.
What kind of stuff are we talking about there?
Well, one of the biggest ones is about consciousness. Like, as AI gets more complex, it makes you wonder if it could ever become truly conscious.
Oh, you mean like have feelings and experiences like humans do?
Right. It's a question that's been around for ages, but AI is making it feel a lot more real.
It's hard to even wrap your head around. Like, if AI could feel things, how would that change how we treat it?
Yeah, exactly. Brings up all sorts of ethical questions.
Definitely makes you think. It's like AI is challenging us to rethink what it even means to be human.
I think that's a big part of why people are so fascinated by it. It's not just technology, it's about understanding ourselves.
So, about the history of AI, you mentioned the class will cover the first 50 years. What were some of the big moments back then?
Well, they might start with something called the Dartmouth Conference back in 1956. That's often seen as like the official start of AI as a field of study.
So that's when it all began. What happened after that?
Well, there was a lot of excitement at first. Researchers were making progress in areas like problem solving and teaching computers to understand language.
Sounds promising. Did they keep up that momentum?
Well, not always. There were ups and downs. Sometimes funding dried up or research priorities changed. There were these periods called AI winters where things kind of stalled out.
So it wasn't just a straight shot to where we are now.
No, but even when things slowed down, people kept working, and that laid the foundation for later breakthroughs.
Which brings us to those neural networks we talked about, right?
Yeah.
That seems like it was a big turning point.
Huge. Neural networks were inspired by how our brains work, and they changed everything. Suddenly, computers could learn from data in a way they couldn't before. That led to things like image recognition and better language processing.
It's amazing how mimicking the brain led to those advances.
I know. And neural networks have just gotten more advanced since then, which is why we're seeing so much cool AI stuff happening now.
It really is mind-blowing how far AI has come. And I love that this OI class is looking at both the history and the future of it.
Totally. It's not just about the technology itself, it's about the bigger picture.
Well, we've talked a lot about the concerns around AI, but what about the good stuff? What are some of the ways it could actually make the world a better place?
Oh, there's so many possibilities. In healthcare, for example, AI is already being used to diagnose diseases earlier and more accurately.
I've even heard about AI that can spot cancer cells better than human doctors. It's incredible.
It is. And in transportation, think about self-driving cars. They have the potential to make roads much safer.
That's true. Plus, less traffic and stress during commutes.
Exactly. And in education, AI can personalize learning for every student. It's like having a personal tutor for everyone.
Wow, that would be a game changer, especially for kids who don't have access to the best schools.
Exactly. And even in environmental stuff, AI can help us track climate change and figure out better ways to protect the planet.
So it's not just about robots and cool gadgets. AI could actually help us solve some of the biggest problems we face.
Absolutely. It's about using technology to make a real difference in the world.
I love that. So it's not all doom and gloom. There's so much potential for good, too.
Definitely. It's all about how we use it, making sure we're developing AI ethically and responsibly.
Which brings us back to the importance of those conversations we were talking about, right?
Absolutely. We need to keep talking about these things, making sure everyone's voice is heard.
And that's where things like this OLI class come in, I guess, getting people educated and engaged in the conversation.
Exactly. The more people understand AI, the better equipped we'll be to shape its future.
Well said. So before we move on, I just want to leave our listeners with something to think about. As AI keeps advancing, what role do you see yourself playing? Will you be part of developing it, using it in your work, or just staying informed about the changes it brings?
It's a question we all need to ask ourselves. The future of AI is being shaped right now, and we all have a part to play.
It's pretty amazing to think about all the different directions AI could go from here.
I know, right? It feels like we're at a turning point. The decisions we make now about AI, how we develop it, how we use it, that's going to have a huge impact down the line.
This OLI class, it seems like it's really trying to get people thinking about that, not just learning about AI, but actually shaping its future.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where those philosophical and moral questions we talked about come into play, right? We really need to be thinking about what kind of future we want to build with AI.
So, like, what are some of the big questions we should be asking ourselves as individuals, as a society, I mean?
Well, one of the most important ones is how do we make sure AI is used for good, for the benefit of humanity, not for harm?
It's kind of a scary thought, right? All this potential, but it could go either way.
Exactly. And the choices we make now, that's what's going to determine which path we take. I think it's so important to keep those conversations going to make sure everyone's voice is heard.
So it's not just about the tech itself. It's about our values, too, and how we want to use this technology.
Exactly. AI is a tool at the end of the day. And like any tool, it can be used in good ways or bad ways. It's our responsibility to make sure it's used for the right reasons.
And that responsibility, it's not just on the people developing AI, right? It's on all of us.
Absolutely. We all need to be thinking about this, talking about it, making sure our voices are heard.
So what can we actually do? I mean, as individuals, how can we make a difference in this whole AI thing?
Well, first of all, stay informed. Learn as much as you can about AI, the good and the bad. Talk to your friends and family about it. And support organizations that are working to make sure AI is developed ethically.
It's kind of empowering to think about that, you know? We're not just along for the ride. We can actually help shape the future of AI.
That's right, we all have a role to play.
Well, I think this deep dive has really given us a lot to think about. From the history of AI to those neural networks and all the philosophical questions it brings up, it's a fascinating topic.
It really is. And I think this OLI class, it's a great example of how we can learn about these things and have those important conversations.
If you're interested in learning more, we'll be sure to include some resources in the show notes. There's a ton of information out there.
And remember, the future of AI isn't set in stone. It's up to us to decide what it looks like.
So keep learning, keep asking questions, and stay engaged. Until next time.